It started with a receipt. Not a dramatic scene. Not some explosive text or lipstick on a collar. Just a folded piece of paper on the kitchen table, next to a grocery list I'd scribbled earlier that week and a coupon Olivia probably meant to use but forgot. At first, I didn't even look at it twice. I was wiping down the counter, half listening to a podcast, when I glanced over and caught the bar's name printed at the top in neat little block letters. Juniper and Pine. That stopped me cold. Not because it was some strange place I'd never heard of, but because I knew it well. Juniper and Pine was where I took Olivia for her birthday 3 years ago, back when she still let me surprise her. The same bar where we ended up staying until last call because we couldn't stop laughing about the couple next to us who had clearly met online and had nothing in common. It was also where I proposed. I remember that night vividly, the flicker of candlelight on her face, the way her hands trembled slightly as she reached for mine, the pure joy in her eyes when she said yes. That place mattered to us, which is exactly why it punched me in the chest to see it on a receipt dated 2 nights ago. A Thursday. And here's the kicker, the receipt wasn't mine. I hadn't been to Juniper and Pine in over a year, but Olivia had. The name on the receipt was hers, right there in black ink. Olivia Martin. 1 server. 2 cocktails. 9:42 p.m. I stood there, staring at it like it was a foreign object, something that had dropped out of a different life. My first instinct wasn't anger. It wasn't even jealousy. It was confusion. She told me she was working late that night, that she had to stay back at the office and wouldn't be home until close to midnight. I remembered even offering to bring her dinner, and she told me not to, that she had already ordered in with her team. So why was she out drinking cocktails at a bar downtown? Our bar, with someone? I didn't confront her right away. I wish I could say I stormed into the bedroom, receipt in hand, demanding answers. But that's not what happened. I just stood there, frozen, while a knot formed in my stomach. It was like the moment before a car crash, when your brain registers the danger but your body hasn't caught up yet. When Olivia walked in 20 minutes later, tossing her keys into the bowl by the door and slipping off her heels like nothing in the world was wrong, I still hadn't moved from the kitchen. She looked tired, or maybe just preoccupied. Her hair was pulled back in one of those effortless ways that still somehow looked styled. She glanced up at me and gave me a small smile. "You're up late," she said, reaching for the fridge. I didn't say anything. I just held up the receipt. The moment she saw it, something changed in her eyes. Not panic exactly, but awareness. Like her brain flipped a switch and she had to decide, in real time, how to play this. She was good, I'll give her that. The reaction came fast. A laugh, light, almost dismissive. "Oh," she said, reaching for the slip. "That? Yeah, I had drinks with a client. Totally forgot I had that in my purse. Must have fallen out." I didn't let go of the receipt. "You told me you were working late at the office." "I was working," she said quickly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "It was a client dinner, Liam. You know how these things go." My heart was pounding. "At Juniper and Pine?" She raised an eyebrow. "What's wrong with Juniper and Pine? You never mentioned it." She tilted her head slightly, her tone sharpening just a bit. "Do I need to run every single appointment by you now? That's not what I'm saying. Because it kind of sounds like it." Her voice was cool now, practiced. "You've been weirdly controlling lately. I didn't think a simple drink with a client would be a big deal." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Because that's the thing. She was flipping the script before I could even ask a real question. I was the bad guy for being suspicious, for noticing, for asking. I tried again. "Who was the client?" She shrugged. "New guy. Andrew. Just joined the Seattle team. My boss wanted me to make him feel welcome since I'm his local contact. That's all. Can I put this down now? Or are you going to grill me about every receipt in my bag?" She wasn't yelling. She wasn't even angry, but that made it worse. Her tone was calm, condescending, like I was being ridiculous for even caring. Still, I wasn't ready to back down. "You know that's the place I proposed to you, right?" Something flickered across her face then. A half second of hesitation, maybe regret or guilt. but it vanished just as quickly. "You're being dramatic," she said. "It's a bar, Liam. It's not sacred." "Maybe not to you," I said under my breath. She let out a long sigh and turned to leave the kitchen. "I'm tired. I've had a long day. Can we not do this right now?" "Right," I said. "Because you're always tired lately." She stopped in the doorway but didn't turn around. "This is why I don't tell you things anymore," she said quietly. "You twist everything into something it's not." And just like that, she disappeared upstairs. I stood there in the kitchen, the silence pressing in around me, the receipt still in my hand. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted it to be nothing. Some forgettable meeting, a one-off drink, an honest oversight. But the look on her face when she saw the receipt, that wasn't forgettable. And the way she flipped it made me the problem for asking. That didn't feel honest. There was a time when Olivia told me everything. Little things. Annoying coworkers, weird meetings, even what she had for lunch. But lately, she'd become a different version of herself. Private, guarded, and I'd been chalking it up to stress, to work, to us both being busy. But maybe I'd been making excuses. The receipt was just a piece of paper. But it opened a door I hadn't wanted to walk through. A door that led to questions I didn't want to ask. And once that door opened, I couldn't close it again. After that night with the receipt, it was like someone hit a switch in my brain. Suddenly, I could not notice the things I'd been brushing off for months. And the worst part? I realized how many chances I'd given her to be honest, and how many times she'd chosen not to be. I didn't say anything the next morning. We moved through our routine like everything was fine. She made coffee. I packed my lunch. We talked about weather, traffic, nothing that mattered. But the words between us felt edited, like we were both reading from a script and terrified of ad-libbing. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table with that receipt again. This time I studied it like evidence. Because now, I couldn't stop myself from thinking about the little things, the subtle shifts. And when I looked back, I couldn't believe how much I had ignored. It started maybe 6 months ago. Olivia got really into working out. Out of nowhere. To most people, that's probably normal. People get health kicks. They buy new gear, they talk about steps and macros. But this was different. Olivia had always hated the gym. Hated sweating, hated cardio. Even joked that yoga was just an excuse to nap in leggings. But suddenly, she was waking up at 5:30 a.m. every other day to go to a 6 a.m. spin class across town. That alone should have been weird enough. But I chalked it up to stress. She said it helped her focus. Said it cleared her head. I believed her. Or maybe I just wanted to. Then came the geolocation thing. She used to share her phone location with me. Not because I asked, just because it was convenient. If I needed to pick her up, or she was late, I could see where she was. But one day, I noticed it was off. It just said, location unavailable. I mentioned it and she brushed it off. Said her phone must have glitched after an update. Tech stuff, she laughed. You know how Apple is. I'll fix it later. She never did. Next came the shoes. I know this sounds stupid, but trust me, it matters. Olivia had this pair of black heels she never wore. I'd seen them in the back of her closet for years, dusty and untouched. Suddenly, they were always missing. Not on her feet when she left. Not in the hallway when she got back. But I'd find them in the trunk of her car. Sometimes with dry cleaning she never mentioned. I didn't ask about them. At the time, it felt too petty. Too insecure. I didn't want to be that husband. But now, I wish I had asked. There were other signs too. Subtle but consistent. Like how her laptop used to be open on the kitchen table, and suddenly it was always closed. Or how she used to show me memes and articles while we were winding down at night, and now her phone barely left her hand. And when it did, the screen was always dim. Like she had adjusted the brightness so I couldn't see what she was doing unless I stared directly at it. She said she needed more boundaries with work. That she was trying to be more present. But she wasn't present. She was somewhere else even when she was sitting right next to me. Then there were the Sunday meetings. At first, I didn't question them. Her team worked across multiple time zones. Sometimes things bled into the weekend. But she stopped asking if I wanted to join her for brunch or if I wanted to walk the dog together like we used to. Instead, she'd throw on makeup, grab her tote bag, and be gone by 11 a.m. "I'll only be a few hours," she'd say. But more often than not, she wouldn't be home until 4 or 5. I remember one Sunday in particular. She left wearing a simple black blouse and came back wearing a different jacket, hair windswept, with a faint trace of perfume. Not the usual one. Something sweeter, bolder. I made a dumb comment trying to be funny. "Did your meeting turn into a modeling shoot?" She laughed too hard, then changed the subject. That was her pattern. Every time I asked even a slightly uncomfortable question, she redirected. Made me feel like I was the weird one for noticing. And I let her. God, I let her. I remember one night when we were sitting on the couch watching TV, and her phone lit up with a message. Just one buzz. No sound. But the glow on her face changed. Like she was excited. I glanced over, but she locked the screen almost instantly. "What was that?" I asked. She shrugged. "Nothing. Just a group chat." I didn't push. I didn't want to seem jealous or controlling. But in that moment, I felt like I was sitting next to a stranger. A stranger who had secrets she wasn't even trying to explain anymore. The distance between us started growing slowly. I'd ask her about her day, and she'd give me one-word answers. I'd try to plan a weekend getaway, and she'd say she was too swamped. I even suggested we do a date night, something spontaneous like the old days. Her response? "Liam, I'm exhausted. Can we not make everything about fixing things all the time?" That one stung, because I was trying. I thought we were just in a rut. Every marriage has them, right? Work stress, life chaos, I figured we'd ride it out. But she wasn't trying. She was pulling away. Silently, deliberately, one decision at a time. And the worst part is how normal it all seemed while it was happening. That's what scares me. How easy it is to gaslight yourself into thinking everything is fine, even when the floor is caving in under you. I started thinking back even further. Before the receipt. Before the workouts. Her mood had changed. She smiled less at home. Laughed more at her phone. She always looked distracted, but not in a worried way. More like someone in a constant daydream. Like there was a version of her life she was living in her head that didn't include me. Even our dog, Milo, noticed. He used to run to the door when she came home. But after a while, he stopped. He'd look at her and then walk away like he didn't recognize the person coming in. I told myself I was imagining things. That I was being oversensitive. That if something was really wrong, she'd tell me. But Olivia had become a master of half-truths. And I had become a master of denial. I don't know exactly when I lost her. Maybe it wasn't one moment. Maybe it was death by 1,000 cuts. 1,000 little decisions she made to keep me on the outside. 1,000 things I let slide because I didn't want to believe the woman I married could ever be unfaithful. But after that night with the receipt, it all clicked. The pattern was there, clear as day. She hadn't just changed. She had been changing for a long time. I just didn't want to see it. I think that's what hurts the most. Not the possibility that she was with someone else, but the realization that I stopped being the person she shared her life with long before I found the proof. I didn't want to know. That's the truth of it. I didn't want to be that guy, the one snooping through his wife's devices, digging for secrets like some second-rate detective. I always believed if you had to go looking for the truth, the damage was already done. Either way, you'd never unsee what you found. But after the receipt, after the workouts, after every little piece of her I could feel slipping away, I had to know. It wasn't a snap decision. I sat with it for days. I wrestled with it, paced the kitchen at night while she slept in the next room, phone on silent, screen facing down on the charger. I told myself I was paranoid. I told myself good husbands didn't betray trust. But the truth was, she already had. So one night, while she was in the shower, I tried something I never imagined myself doing. She had a cloud account, one of those apps that automatically backed up her photos and videos. I only knew about it because I'd helped her set it up a year ago when she got a new phone. She'd given me the password then, told me to write it down in case she ever got locked out. I never used it, never even thought to, until now. I still remember the moment I typed it in. My hands were shaking. My throat felt like sand. I told myself I was just being stupid, that I was going to open it up, see 100 pictures of coffee cups and work presentations and dumb memes, and then go to bed feeling ashamed of myself. But that's not what happened. The login worked. Instantly, her photo library loaded in front of me. And that's when everything fell apart. There weren't 100 coffee photos. There were photos of her at a lake house, our lake house, but she wasn't alone. She was with someone. A man. Tall, dark hair, sunglasses. Always next to her. Always close. Too close. I clicked the first one. They were on the dock. She was sitting beside him, legs dangling over the edge, a bottle of wine between them. Her head tilted against his shoulder like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like she belonged there. The timestamp? A weekend she told me she was on a team retreat in Bend. I felt something cold settle into my chest. I kept clicking. Next photo. Her in the passenger seat of his car, her hand reaching across the console to touch his arm. Caption. Still feels like a dream. Next, a blurry video clip. They're in a motel room. She's filming him from behind as he's brushing his teeth. Both of them laughing. His voice is muffled, but he says something like, "You're such a creep," and she giggles. This breathy, teenage-sounding laugh I hadn't heard in years. Couldn't breathe. I sat back in the chair, suddenly freezing despite the summer heat. My heart was pounding so loud I thought I might be having a panic attack. But the worst wasn't the photos. It was the texts. Because for whatever reason, maybe the cloud synced old messages too, I could see pieces of her conversations with him. His name was Andrew, and her messages, they broke me. You make me feel like myself again. I forgot how good it feels to be wanted. Everything's so different with you. It's like I'm alive again. I wish I could freeze time when I'm with you. I think about you when I'm home. I can't help it. Each one felt like a punch to the gut. Not just because of what she said, but because of what she never said to me anymore. Those weren't work texts. That wasn't a professional connection. That was an affair. Emotional. Physical. Full stop. I scrolled until I couldn't anymore. Until the screen blurred from my tears. There were no excuses left. No rationalizations. No way to unsee it. This was the proof. The truth I'd spent weeks trying to deny. She'd chosen someone else. And it wasn't some fling. It wasn't meaningless. It was detailed. Planned. Int asterisk mate. That night I didn't confront her. I sat alone in the garage for over an hour. Staring at the walls. Phone in my lap. Heart somewhere near my knees. Every version of our life. The wedding, the weekends, the inside jokes, the holidays, the years we were supposed to still have ahead. Felt like a hallucination. At some point, she came looking for me. Poked her head into the garage. Asked if I was okay. I mumbled something about not feeling well and she gave me a concerned smile. The kind you give someone you pity. She had no idea I knew. Not yet. And for some reason, I didn't want her to know I knew. Not right away. Maybe I was afraid of how she'd react. Maybe I needed to hold on to my power for just a little longer. Or maybe I just couldn't stand the idea of hearing her say it out loud. Because if she said it, it would become real in a way that shattered everything. That night, we lay in bed. Her scrolling through her phone. Me staring at the ceiling. She leaned over to kiss my shoulder and whispered, "I miss how close we used to be." I didn't respond. I didn't move. I just kept my eyes on the ceiling, silently dying. She asked me if I was mad at her. Said I'd been distant lately. And I remember the irony of that hitting me so hard I almost laughed. I was being distant. I turned to her then. Looked her in the eyes for the first time in what felt like days. "I'm tired," I said. She nodded, misreading it completely. "Yeah, me too." And she rolled over, facing away from me. The next morning, I watched her get ready. She was humming. Actually humming. As she packed her work bag. I wanted to ask if she'd texted Andrew that morning. If she'd told him I looked tired. Or if she laughed about how clueless I was. But instead, I just sat there sipping coffee. watching the woman I married straighten her hair in the mirror while my entire world sat shattered in my chest. The thing is, I didn't feel rage. Not the way I expected. I didn't want to scream or throw things. I didn't want revenge or drama. What I felt was hollow, like she had taken something from me I didn't know how to get back. Later that week, she asked me why I hadn't touched her lately. No kisses. No warmth. No int asterisk Macy. And I could have lied. I could have said I was stressed or tired or not in the mood. But I didn't. I looked at her steady and said, I can't touch someone who let another man do it first. Her face went pale. She blinked once, twice, then tried to speak, but the words got caught in her throat. And in that moment I knew she knew that I knew. The mask slipped. The game was up. No more pretending. She whispered, Liam, like it was a prayer or maybe a warning. But I just stood up, rinsed my coffee mug, and walked out the door. I didn't need to hear her excuses. I already had the truth. And I knew this was the beginning of the end. I didn't go home that night, after I dropped that line. I can't touch someone who let another man do it first. I left the house without a plan, without a bag, without even my charger. I drove for hours, aimless, silent, no music, no calls, just the sound of tires on wet pavement and the occasional blink of a turn signal when I didn't even know where I was going. I didn't want to hear her cry. I didn't want to see her fall apart. I didn't want to watch her scramble to explain, to minimize, to spin this into something it wasn't. I wasn't ready, so I didn't give her the chance. At some point, I pulled into a motel 2 towns over. Nothing fancy, one of those roadside places with a flickering sign and curtains that don't quite close. I paid in cash, told the guy at the desk I didn't need a receipt, and collapsed on a bed that smelled faintly of bleach and cigarette smoke. And that's where I stayed. I don't know how long I laid there. Hours maybe. Staring at the ceiling, feeling everything and nothing at the same time. I didn't cry. I didn't even move. I just existed, numb. The next morning, I turned my phone on to 17 missed calls and a long string of texts from Olivia. Please, Liam, just talk to me. Where are you? I'm scared. I know you saw something. I know I messed up. Please let me explain. I'll tell you everything. Just please come home. I didn't respond. I wasn't ready to hear her voice. I wasn't ready to step back into that house and feel everything waiting for me in the silence. So I didn't. I stayed gone for 2 more nights. Eventually, I called my brother, told him I needed space, and stayed on his couch for a few days. He didn't ask questions. Just handed me a blanket and let me be. Sometimes silence is the only kind of support that makes sense. But while I was gone, she broke. She unraveled in the house we used to call home. And I didn't know how deep it went until later, until after she sent me something that changed everything. It was a file. A single email with no subject line. No body text. Just an attachment. A document called For Liam. Docs. I almost deleted it. Part of me didn't want to give her the satisfaction of being heard. But something told me this wasn't another excuse. This wasn't her spinning it. This was something else. So I opened it. And I read. It was 10 pages long. A confession. Raw. Unfiltered. The kind of thing you only write when you've got nothing left to lose. She had written it like a letter, but it wasn't for me to respond to. It was her reckoning with herself, with her choices, with the person she had become. It started like this. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who writes a confession. The kind of woman who destroys the person who loved her most. But here I am. And if you're reading this, I guess there's nothing left to protect anymore. She went all the way back to when it started. 6 months earlier. A conference in Seattle. She was asked to represent her department. Said she didn't even want to go at first. I remember that week. She was weird about it. Said she was nervous. Spent too much time picking what to wear. I thought it was nerves. Turns out it was attraction. She met him on the 2nd day. Andrew. That name again. Said he was charming, smart. One of those people who just seems to see you. They sat next to each other during one of the breakout sessions. Talked over coffee afterward. It was just professional, she wrote. At first. He complimented my ideas. My voice. Not in a creepy way. It felt innocent. But I remember smiling in a way I hadn't in a long time. After the conference, they started emailing. Just work stuff at first. Then jokes. Then memes. Then late-night texts that felt dangerous in a way that made her feel alive. She admitted she could have stopped it. Multiple times. She saw the line and crossed it anyway. I told myself I was just making a friend. I told myself Liam wouldn't care. But every time I deleted a message, or waited until he was asleep to text Andrew, I knew. I knew I was betraying him. She talked about their first drink together, ironically, at the same bar I found the receipt from. Juniper and Pine. She wrote that she didn't even plan to go there with Andrew. That it just happened. They were walking, talking, and it felt right. I don't know if I believe that. Maybe part of me doesn't want to. That night, she said, they kissed. It was like waking up after being asleep for years. She wrote, I felt like a different person, and I hated myself for loving it. I read that line 10 times. Each time it cut deeper. From there, it spiraled. More meetings. Fake work dinners. Afternoons at the lake house when she said she was at strategy sessions. Whole weekends, apparently, where she made up conferences that didn't exist. She even gave him a key to our cabin. She said Andrew made her feel seen. With Liam, I was always the planner, the achiever, the one who held everything together. But with Andrew, I could fall apart. I could be reckless. I didn't have to be anyone but myself. That part stung more than the physical betrayal, because I realized I hadn't seen her as fragile in years. I thought I was protecting her by being solid, consistent, dependable, but maybe she felt suffocated by that. She admitted she lied to herself for weeks, told herself it was a phase, that she'd get it out of her system, that it didn't mean anything. But every time she tried to stop, she'd get one message from him and feel pulled back in. She described the guilt like drowning. Every time you kissed me goodnight, I felt like a monster. I'd stare at the ceiling and think, you're destroying the only person who's ever truly loved you. She said she wanted me to find out. That deep down, she was too much of a coward to confess, so she started leaving things. Receipts, clues, hoping I'd catch her. I didn't want to be the one to end it. I wanted you to find the pieces and walk away so I wouldn't have to be the bad guy. But I was the bad guy, and I hate myself for it. Near the end of the letter, she wrote something I'll never forget. I still love you, Liam. In a different way, maybe, but it's real. I just got lost. I looked for something outside us that I should have fought for inside us. I don't deserve forgiveness. I just needed you to know that this wasn't about you not being enough. It was about me not knowing who I was anymore. I sat there in my brother's apartment, reading those words, my hands shaking. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even angry. I just felt shattered. Like every piece of her I thought I knew had slipped through my fingers. She was broken too. I could see that now. The way she deflected. The way she snapped at me when I questioned her. The way she looked tired all the time. She wasn't hiding it because she didn't care. She was hiding it because she didn't know how to deal with the person she had become. I went home 2 days later. The house was quiet. She was in the guest room, door shut, the way I'd left it. But I knew she was awake, probably waiting. I didn't talk to her that night. Couldn't. But I saw the laptop on the kitchen table. The one she used to hide. Now it was wide open. Documents still there. Blinking cursor at the end of her confession. I didn't close it. I just stared at it one last time and then walked into the bedroom where we used to fall asleep with our backs touching and our feet tangled up, and I lay there in the dark, wondering how two people could love each other and still end up so lost. I drove south the next morning. No bags, no plan. Just me, the road, and a quiet stretch of Oregon coastline calling my name like some kind of sanctuary. I didn't tell Olivia I was leaving. I didn't leave a note. I wasn't running. I just needed a place where the air didn't feel so full of betrayal. Somewhere I could finally fall apart without her in the next room. Without the walls reminding me of what I'd lost. My uncle has a beach house in Manzanita, tucked behind the dunes, barely bigger than a studio apartment. We used to stay there when I was a kid. It's got this old wood stove that smells like cedar and salt, and a single narrow window that looks out onto the endless gray of the Pacific. That's where I went. The moment I walked through the door, I finally exhaled. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, I let the weight hit me full force. I didn't fight it. I didn't pretend I was okay. I dropped my keys on the floor, sat down on the worn-out couch, and let the silence wrap around me like a blanket made of grief. And then I read the letter again. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to feel it all one more time. Maybe I was afraid that if I didn't keep it front and center, I'd bury it and never deal with it properly. So I opened her email again on my phone. That same document. 10 pages of pain and apology and self-loathing, and I read it slowly, like it was scripture. The second time through, I saw things I hadn't noticed before. Not just her guilt, not just her desperation, but the reasons, the cracks that had slowly grown between us. Cracks I had ignored. Cracks I might have even caused, if I'm honest. Because here's the truth I didn't want to admit, even to myself. Our marriage hadn't been okay for a while. Long before Andrew. Long before the first missed dinner or the unexplained Sunday meeting. Things had shifted. Not because of any one moment, but in those tiny, almost invisible ways that you don't notice until it's too late. We stopped being curious about each other. We stopped asking the real questions. We stopped fighting for each other. And maybe she was the one who broke the vows. Maybe she was the one who crossed the line. But I couldn't pretend like I had no part in the distance that made room for someone else. That realization hurt more than anything. Not because it made her actions okay, they weren't. But because it forced me to accept something I'd been too proud to face. That I had slowly let the bond between us dissolve, thinking it would hold itself together just because it always had. I sat with that truth for hours, watching the waves, reading her words again, letting them echo around that tiny wooden house like prayers in a cathedral. I didn't stop loving you, she wrote. I just forgot how to feel it. I kept returning to that line. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I knew exactly what she meant, because I'd forgotten too. Not how to love her, but how to show it. Somewhere between the work deadlines and the grocery runs and the quiet, tired evenings where we both stared at screens instead of each other, I forgot to make her feel seen. Not because I stopped caring, but because I started assuming she already knew. And now here we were. Two people who loved each other once, maybe still did, but who had built so many walls that we couldn't see through them anymore. It didn't excuse what she did, but it explained why I wasn't surprised. I stayed at the beach house for 3 days. I didn't talk to anyone, didn't check my work email. I barely even turned on the lights. I just sat with my pain and let it speak. Let it scream. Let it whisper all the things I'd been trying not to hear. By the third morning, something shifted. I didn't feel better, but I felt clearer. I realized I didn't want to destroy myself over this. I didn't want to let someone else's mistake, her mistake, become the blueprint for my identity. I didn't want to live my life as the guy who got cheated on, who walked around carrying bitterness like armor. I didn't want to be hollow. I wanted to heal. And healing, I realized, wasn't going to come from dragging her through the mud. It wasn't going to come from angry texts or cold silence or revenge fantasies. It wasn't going to come from forcing her to explain herself over and over until the pain stopped stinging. Healing was going to come from choosing who I wanted to be after the worst thing happened. And I didn't want to be angry forever. So I made a decision. Not to forget. Not to forgive her. Not yet, maybe not ever. But to move forward. I opened a new document on my phone and wrote the words, "This is where I start again." That was my promise to myself. My reminder that I still had a life to live. A good one if I wanted it. Olivia had taken our future together. But she hadn't taken me. That night, I walked out onto the beach for the first time since I arrived. The sky was overcast, heavy with early evening fog. The tide was coming in slow, and the air smelled like kelp and rain. I stood at the edge of the water, letting the waves pull at my shoes, and I spoke out loud. Just once. I'm not broken. Felt stupid. Dramatic. But somehow necessary. Because I needed to hear it from myself. I needed to name it. To reclaim something. She had written about feeling seen. And for so long, I had made it my job to see her. But now I needed to turn that same energy inward. I needed to see me. And the man I saw in that moment, standing alone at the edge of a cold Pacific Ocean, heart bruised but beating, wasn't some discarded husband. He was someone who'd been tested, who didn't fall apart, who could choose clarity over bitterness, pain over numbness, growth over vengeance. The next morning, I packed my things, drove back up the coast with the windows down and no music playing. I didn't stop. I didn't check my phone. I just let the rhythm of the road be enough. When I got home, Olivia was gone. She'd left a note on the counter. Nothing dramatic. Just, "I'm staying at a friend's for now. Take whatever time you need. I'll respect it." It was the first time in weeks that she hadn't tried to explain herself. And weirdly, I appreciated that. I put her note on top of her letter, then placed both inside a drawer I didn't open again for a long time. And that night, I slept in our bed, alone. Not because I was reclaiming it or trying to make a statement, but because I was finally ready to stop running from the silence. Because this wasn't the end of me, it was the end of us. And I was learning how to make peace with that. The divorce came quietly. No fights, no lawyers battling in courtrooms. Just a couple signing papers at a wooden desk with too many memories between them. No kids. No shared property we couldn't divide with a spreadsheet. She cried. I didn't. I'd done my crying alone on the coast. I moved into a small apartment closer to work. Clean slate. I started running again, reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in years. I was learning to breathe differently, slower, more intentionally. Then, one evening, a message from her. Olivia. He left. It ended. I ruined everything for nothing. I stared at it, expected to feel something, but I didn't. Just a dull ache, a distant echo. I replied, respectfully but simply, I hope you find healing. Take care. She didn't answer. Months later, I stood beside Erin, someone from my photography group, at a local art gallery. We weren't a couple, not yet,